Hi, I've been playing around with the terrain tool in Unity 2018.3, and then I also started playing around with how to make some clouds, and I got an idea from somebody else on YouTube called Sketch to use particle system for clouds. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial is show you how I came up with basically this uh, terrain where the clouds are kind of lifelike, with a simple technique and you can walk around and the clouds kind of move around almost like they're real, but it's as you can see on the left, it's a particle system. And the music, it's just to put you in that soothing mood. All right, so let's see, how did I do this? So what I'll do here is I'll start off by making a new scene. Let me just save the one I made here to show you the end result of what we're going to try to do. And I'll make a new scene, and to the new scene I'll just add a terrain. And so just uncheck static for the terrain object, and the baking ETA thing should go away, and you should be able to like work more smoothly. And after you're finished, you could turn that back on if you want to. All right, so here I have a terrain, and the first thing I'll do is I'll just add some texture to it so I could see the heights and everything. So here I got paint texture selected, and I'll just say I'm going to create a layer to add the first texture, and I'm going to have my first texture be soil. All right. Now I'm just going to add some mountains. So I'm going to switch to the raise and lower terrain, and I'm going to make my brush pretty big and my opacity really, really low. And I'll just start moving in a circular motion, gently raising up the terrain for a mountain. Okay, and then as I raise up terrain a little bit, I'll shrink my brush down and start kind of getting some of these lines here like mountains have coming down, some streaming lines there. hmm And then maybe I'll switch off to this guy and a little bit bigger. And I'll have a mountain that I'll make here. Okay. And I'll have a mountain. Then maybe I'll add another texture. This is just me making a terrain look like something here. So I'll add another texture for the grass. And there you go, grass. And let's go back to some kind of puffy brush, a little bit smaller. Just start rubbing some grass, gently rubbing. I think I need a little bit more opacity here. There we go. Gently rubbing some grass into the scene. Am I selecting grass? I am not selecting grass. Gently rubbing some grass into the scene. And the fields there. And then maybe one more for rocks. There we go. Select the rocks. And rub in some rock. They're just like the quick and dirty. The quick and dirty terrain. All right. So I got something. Okay. Ooh, let me just put a little bit of soil mixed in there because I see the tiling happening a little too much. And go back to this one there a little bit. And yeah, just something. All right, so now I have a terrain and file save. And I think that let's call this tutorial. Let's call this scene tutorial. And I think I'll just add a player in here so we could see as we're making our clouds how it looks, if we're satisfied or not. So I'll add a capsule and I'll call that player. And then I'll just add in a rigid body. So he drops to the floor, and then I have my player script over here to control movement, and the camera, I'll just make it a child of the player. All right, so let's see what I got on the player script. I'll just show you the player script so you could copy it if you want to. It's not too big, right? Uses Unity engine, move speed, look speed, jump force. Then I have a pointer to camera and the rigid body. In the start, I initialize the camera and the rigid body. So over here, I get a pointer to the rigid body, and then I dampen the spin by dampening the angular drag in case I hit something I don't want to keep spinning around. And then I constrain falling over on the X and the Y, okay, so I don't fall down. Then for the camera, I get a pointer to the camera, which is a child of the player. So I get component and children to get the camera. And then I set the camera right inside the player to look in the same direction as the player. And here, since I'm doing a first person control, I'm just going to lock the cursor. Okay, so that's initializing the player control. Then over here with update, I'm going to do movement by reading the horizontal and the vertical axes. And then I'll translate to the right and the left for horizontal. And move speed controls like how fast I move. And I always multiply by time delta time. And then I also transform forward and backward. Same thing using move speed. So that's having my character move across the plane forward and backward and strafing left to right. Then over here I have the look around, which is the mouse X and Y. So I rotate the player and I rotate the camera separately. And just for the heck of it, let's put in jump. If I jump, then I add some force to the rigid body to jump up. So that's the script. Let's see how we look right now. If I press play, let me just set the camera here, looking into this view, Control Shift F. Yeah, because the other view is quite useless. And then if I press play right now on a terrain, there's no cloud yet, but here I am. I fall to the ground and I can move around. There's no cloud in the sky. There's a little sun. Now let's start to add the clouds. So the clouds, we're going to use the particle system. All right, so I'm going to go right here, right click, and I'm going to add a particle system. Okay, and by default, you can see this little blue, this little orange things here. This is the default particle system right now that's in the scene. And we're going to modify that. So first thing we're going to modify are the particles that are actually coming out, because right now they're just a default, sphere particle. So let's go to, where is it that it happens? Here, shape and texture. And I'm going to pick my smoke texture instead. And now the particles are coming out a little different. That's for the texture there. And where else do I do it? So one was shape, texture, I set it to my smoke texture. And the other place, is it the renderer? Yeah, here it goes. Here's the material for rendering. Instead of being the for particles, I want it to be my cloudy material that I made. I'll tell you how I made the materials afterward. And now you can see that each one is coming up really fast, but that's basically now changed to be the cloudy texture. And let me just take a second to show you how I made these cloudy textures. First of all, when you go online to look for something to use for this puffy cloud thing, I just typed in the word smoke texture into Chrome, and then I come up with images here. And what I want is one that has a transparent background. So I click transparent, and a lot of these, when I load them up, this one is not transparent. I didn't see the checker background. So it took me a while to find something. So here's transparent, seamless sometimes. But, when I do find something, this one is a black. this one's transparent here, so this one would be a good image I could use. And that's what I did. Then I just downloaded it to my desktop, and then I drag and dropped it into Unity. And here it is, the texture. I named it smoke. Now I left the texture by default. I had it put read write enabled over here. I checked that, and then I said apply. So this is default 2D texture. In the advanced settings, click read write enabled, and then press apply. You have your texture. Then I made a material for which I dragged and dropped the right here. This is a I made a new material, but I set it to particles, standard unlit material, and then I set it to fade for the render mode. And over here for albedo, I picked my smoke texture, and I made sure that the color wasn't like red, because then you see the clouds in the background, how they kind of look like blood. I just made sure they were white. And even if they were yellow, I don't want them to look yellowish because clouds are just simply white. So I picked that, made sure that the color was white, and my texture was the material I made from that cloud. So, and remember, it's a shader of particle, standard unlit. So now when I go to my particle system, I just took where did I go? Two places. Over here in the shape, I set the texture smoke, and in the renderer, I set the material to my cloudy material. So now I have these shapes here. Now they're too small to be clouds in my scene. If I scroll out, they still do look like particles. So the next thing I do is I decrease the start speed 5, and I want it to move really, really slow. So I'm going to pick a constant like 0.1 to maybe, I don't know, 0.4. And that's my start speed. So now it's moving much slower. And my start size, I want these to be like the size of clouds. So instead of a size from 1 to 1, I'm going to pick a size something more like 75. You see how that size looks better? 75 to maybe 150. All right. So now this is the size that's more like the size a cloud would be if you look at the scene. Size and speed and the lifetime of a cloud. Let's have it be a little bit higher, like maybe 10 seconds each. And we're getting there. Now the clouds are just all in this tight little spot. Let's change the space that it renders over, which I think, no, this is billboard mode. It's here, it is shape. So right now the shape is the shape of an ice cream cone, but I'm going to use the box shape, and I'm just going to scale it up to maybe 200 by 200 XY. So it's funny because the XY here is going like this on the terrain. I thought it was X and Z, but it's XY for this particle system. So right now I have a set of clouds concentrated over this area, and I guess I could spread it out over the entire terrain by just increasing the size of these things, maybe 500 by 500. And now we see the clouds are spacing out a little bit more. Let's center that over our terrain. So we use the move icon and center that over the terrain a little bit better. And I guess that the box could even be bigger than the size of the terrain so you could see it off the edges. But let's check how that looks right now by playing and looking around with our character again. So I'm going to press play. And this is from the ground view. So I could start seeing these clouds kind of popping into the sky and moving slightly. All right, so the size looks better. Let's add some more randomness here. On the emission, 10 is good. Unless we want it to be really cloudy, we could up that. Box from the volume. And this is the emission area. Then for here, I'm trying to look for something to have the clouds rotate, have them move instead of just popping and coming off. So let's get rid of the popping first. So for the popping, that would be color over lifetime. All right. So here's color over lifetime. We want the color to stay the same, but we want to play around with the alpha transparency. So the bottom is the color, the top is the alpha. So I want to add two more alpha transitions so that when the cloud is coming into the scene, it could start off with an alpha of 0, see, and fade in. And then when it's going to come out of the scene, we could go from the white and we could fade out. Okay, so that should have the clouds stop popping in and out so much. So let me save that. And rotation over lifetime. Maybe this could help them rotate a little bit. But before I turn that on, let's see how the popping in and out of the sky looks. So here we go. And maybe one thing we could do also, see, so now the clouds are more gently appearing. You see that? Another thing we could do is when I start, the clouds kind of start emitting, but it's not like the sky comes out of nowhere. So let's turn on the pre-warm, and that means the clouds will be there from when I press start. See, there's already a set of clouds in the sky. All right, so there you go. So they're all coming up, and right now they're at the same rotation. And the size variation isn't that great. Maybe I could make this a little better. Maybe I'll do 50 to 150. Now, okay, there's another setting here for the size. I just noticed in render, um, here was the start size. But then here in rendering, I have another size setting for the minimum and the maximum particle size. So from whatever the particle size starts at, maybe I can go from a point half of the size to maybe 2 times the size. Let's see what that looks like. And make sure that goes in there, and let me press play. Ooh, yes, some of these particles are really big. It almost looks like I have fog because the sky is kind of low. But I guess if I go into the mountains, you would kind of run into the clouds. Let's go out there into the field. See what it looks like from out there. Looks like I'm running out of clouds. And if I look off in that direction, there are no clouds. Then if I look toward the mountain, it's like, holy moly, look at that concentration of clouds there, but not out there. So maybe I could control that by just making this a little bit bigger. I could use scale over here, maybe just increase the area here. And also, right now my clouds are almost at ground level, so maybe I'm gonna lift them up higher. Okay, I'm gonna lift them up a little bit higher. There, so it's at the top of the mountains. And also my box is very slender that I'm emitting from, the shape I'm emitting from. So maybe over here the box could have a more of a height. So let's see, is that this Z? Yeah, it's the Z. See, so they're emitting from more of an area of space. All right, let's see how that looks as I modify my clouds, trying to make them look a little more realistic. Whoops, I'm upside down. Sorry about that. Ugh, there we go. Oh, it's looking a little bit better. Now, the only thing is, oh, these clouds are really dead in the water. They are not moving at all. Let's see if I can modify that a little bit more. So let me zoom in here, press play. Yeah, these clouds are stagnant. So maybe my speed's a little too low. Maybe I could go from like 0.5 to 1.0. The clouds moving a little bit more. They're moving very slow. I guess they're very big. I got the fading in. I got to have some rotation. So let's, whoa, there we go. rotation over time. So right now, it's just rotating at an angular velocity of 45, but let's have it do some random. So between maybe minus 5 and 5. Yeah, that looks like it's moving, like it's alive, but it's not moving too much. So let's see how that looks in play mode. Let me go play it so I can see it from down on the ground. There we go. So they're moving ever so slightly. See if I look. So it does look like they're living clouds. If I look up at them. And, this is basically how I did the cloud effect. And I could keep tweaking it if I wanted to. Maybe add some different cloud types instead of the one texture, but simply done. This is a cool way to get some clouds in your scene. Okay, there you go.